LiberalViewer presents.
So as almost all of you probably know by now, a Florida jury has found George Zimmerman not guilty for his killing of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, but in case you missed the actual moment, it went down like this.
Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict? If you'll please fold the verdict form and hand it to Deputy Jarvis. Okay, if you'll please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we the jury find George Zimmerman not guilty. So say we all four-person.
Now I definitely had mixed feelings about that verdict. On the one hand, I empathize and even agree with my friends on the left that Trayvon Martin was racially profiled, basically followed and eventually killed for walking while black, and that's just wrong. On the other hand, because of the years I spent as a criminal defense attorney, I have to empathize and even agree with George Zimmerman's defense team that the prosecution didn't present enough evidence to convict Zimmerman beyond a reasonable doubt. That's because if you look at the key last two sentences of the jury instruction used to explain the justifiable use of deadly force, you'll see that the prosecution had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that it was not self-defense. The incomplete facts in the case could lead to any number of reasonable scenarios about what happened. Maybe George Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin out of malice. Maybe he shot him out of a reasonable fear, but without enough facts to know beyond a reasonable doubt? Well, Zimmerman defense attorney Mark O'Mara used a chart about the prosecution's burden of proof very similar to one I used to use to remind jurors that it's not enough to be possibly guilty, likely guilty, or even highly likely guilty. A guilty verdict requires finding guilt beyond all reasonable doubt, and whatever credibility problems George Zimmerman had, there was no one to tell Trayvon Martin's side of the story because he's dead. That's the sad irony that makes me feel so bad about the case, even as I think the jurors reached the right result, but I want to know what you think. Did the jury reach the right verdict by finding George Zimmerman not guilty? And outside the criminal context, what level of responsibility does George Zimmerman have for killing Trayvon Martin?
YouTube, you decide.